Hey everybody, we are checking in from PAX South as we are launching NESmaker, and we're coming to you live in front of a giant dragon.
So far he's tame, we've survived.
Yeah, we were looking for a cool place here to film and dragon. We wanted to go through the frequently asked questions. We put it out to you guys, the people who have voiced an interest in backing this project. We said, hey, let us know your biggest questions. So we're going to run through all of them, except for the ones about sort of the costs and the rewards, because hopefully you guys can see that in the rest of the campaign. There are some really good questions here, and we're going to answer all of them to the best of our ability. So, without further ado, how can NESmaker work without having to write any code? Okay.
We did a deal with the devil.
It's witchcraft. Hopefully in the Kickstarter video you guys kind of saw the string of code, the string of assembly language. NESmaker is basically a front end for an engine that does use code.
So any software, you're using code,
yeah.
You know, but a program like Photoshop, you're working in it, you're making art, you're exporting it to whatever file format you like. You don't interface with code. NESmaker is the same thing. It's a front end, user-friendly development environment that doesn't involve you writing the code.
That's exactly right. So the code is there as you are making changes to the drag and drop interface, to the GUI interface. When you go to export that and test it, it's making the changes to the assembly code for it to assemble properly. Mostly it's making changes to giant tables, lookup tables and things like that for things like animation and things like the screens. But it goes way down fine into monster behaviors and hero offset values and all kinds of things that sort of determine what kind of game you're creating.
And truly, this was the kind of thing that we just needed to get our game done in an efficient format, because the workflow just to change all that stuff when we wanted to test something else was such a pain. So this just was a way of us getting our work done faster, which you now get to benefit from.
Yeah, our 3 years of figuring out an engine that could do that and a front end that can manipulate all that, you guys get to have sort of instantly. So I hope that answers that first question. If you have further questions on that, feel free to ask. We can show you, we can walk through it, we can show you how certain things manipulate the code. Next question, can we make music and sound effects in NESmaker? Currently, no. We never had our need to have a tool to make music and sound effects because we used FamiTracker. Music and sound effects were pretty much done before we even started working on NESmaker. So we, making Mystic Searches, never had a need for that.
But when it comes to making NESmaker a comprehensive development tool, we absolutely want to have a music engine as part of it.
As a musician, one thing that sort of annoys me about a tool like FamiTracker, it's cool, it's great, it's amazing. I'm not saying anything bad.
We wouldn't have any music without it.
I'm not saying it's bad. However, it is geared towards programmers, which NES Music is geared towards programmers. But I want a tool that is more geared towards a musician. It looks like a piano roll. It functions the way that MIDI input does.
Right. NESmaker is all about making NES games intuitive for creatives.
Right.
So we want the music interface to be the exact same thing.
One of the reasons that we are launching a crowdfunding campaign is to establish some things like that. Now, I don't know at what point we're going to be able to start working on a super comprehensive music tool, but at the very least, if we don't have a comprehensive music tool that is able to get in the first version of NESmaker, we will have very adequate interfacing with FamiTracker.
Yeah, and we'll explain to you how it's done. You know, we won't leave you hanging on the music
with no
side.
music, right?
We'll make sure that you can have music in your game somehow.
Yeah. So, what genre modules are planned? Any stretch goal modules? Great question. Right now, currently we have made games that are platform games, that are RPGs, that are action adventure games, that are beat 'em ups.
Our engine is a top-down action adventure game. However, we've been able to sort of creatively work around that and mock up platformers, RPGs.
Without getting into the code.
All doable.
Just with the interface that already exists right now. But here's the problem. Let's say you wanted to make a full RPG. Well, RPG is super text heavy. We only have a finite amount of memory allocated for text.
Right. But we do have a lot of data allocated for collisions, and because we have a top-down adventure game, you don't need all that stuff.
You don't need that collision data for an RPG. So what we want to do is we want to build an RPG module where it will reallocate the banks in a way that's more geared towards making an RPG, and therefore easier interface with the tool. It's using the banks in a different way. And the same thing with the platform game. With the platform game, you don't need that much text. What you need is a lot of screen data, especially if you have scrolling screens. So it would change the way that the tool works in that way. But keep in mind that we've already got a good start on the mechanics of each of these engines. It's just optimizing the code and the tool. So right now, planned to fully answer the question, we have.
You want to do a platformer
well,
module?
hold on.
Okay.
Before we get there, the adventure game engine completely done and be able to be sort of modified in these engines. That's the number one step.
That's true.
Once we get that, then we're talking about stretch goals for each module. And the stretch goals are, we want a platform module.
Right, we want an RPG maker.
RPG module. A beat 'em up, it's like a brawler
style,
module.
Yeah. A shooter.
A shooter. And those were the ones that we had planned.
Yep.
Aside from that, we
can keep going.
Yeah. Aside from that, we have an empty module.
Yes.
And we're going to come back to that to answer one of these other questions. So that's what we have planned. I would love to also add like a Metroidvania style engine.
Sure.
However, once we make a platform engine, you could pretty much do that. So
Absolutely.
I don't know that we need to make that a tier. We'll take more money, but honestly, I think we won't need to add a module for that. These modules are doing the things that are common to that genre. They will be able to be bent and broken to do really cool things without even touching the code.
We've been able to get a pretty wide variety of gameplay just using the engine that we have, and so I think with these other modules, if you're creative about how you repurpose the mechanics, there's really no limit to what you can do.
Sure.
Except the limits that are the NES.
Right. Is the engine open source editable? If you're talking about the tool or the game engine, those are two different questions. The tool is going to be pretty hard coded, and the engine has some parts that are tethered to the tool that really we're not going to be able to change unless it breaks the tool. Let me explain. One of the hardest things to deal with the NES is memory management and where everything goes and how to bank switch at the right times to do different things and all that stuff. That's what takes the longest when it comes to making a NES game. Not learning ASM, it's that.
And we make it intuitive to somebody who doesn't know what they're doing and just starting out. Those things need to be fixed.
Right, exactly.
They need to be in place.
So we want to make that a non-editable thing. If you're to the point where you're editing that anyway, seriously, do yourself a favor, make your own engine. You're there, you don't need this tool, you'll probably make something amazing. So we want to keep those things fixed. But within that, it's kind of like in this bank is where our physics engine lives. Well, maybe you want to make your own physics engine that behaves in a wacky way that ours can't. You can then replace the physics engine. You can write your own physics, or like how collisions work in your game, what it actually does. You'll be able to write ASM code for things like that.
Right.
So
think about like other WYSIWYG game development software. You can absolutely get in and interface with the code, or you can use the drag and drop functionality. It's really up to you how deep you want to get into it without breaking the actual software.
And like with GameMaker, it has a way that it draws things. You're never getting into how it actually draws a frame of data, right? You're telling it what to draw, but you're not actually getting into the code that handles the drawing. So you can think about it kind of like that. We have an API that's built, we have a code library that's built in, and you're manipulating sort of the existing code around it. And hopefully that sort of answers the question. Can we import our own assembly code? And that hopefully answers that. I'll take one step further. The empty module that I'm talking about is geared exactly towards that. From the ground up, those tethers I was talking about are in place, but other than that, you can write your own animation engine. You can write your own.
And if you are an experienced programmer and you just want to use this tool as a way of streamlining your workflow the way we did, that's how you do that.
If you just want to use our tool as a screen tool or to make palette output data or that kind of thing, animation data that you can then use how you want, the tool might be really beneficial to you, even if you decide not to use this to make a full game and create your own engine and just use this to mine for the data. Can we pick which mapper chip our game relies on? No. So as of this moment and probably forever, the mapper that our game uses our tool uses is Mapper 30. These carts are available through Infinite NES Lives. this is one of the decisions that we had to make in order to make the tool so ubiquitous and able to be used by so many different ways.
It was one of the chicken and the egg sort of paradoxes that we had to deal with when making this. Is what do you need the game to do? What's the best mapper for it, et cetera, et cetera. We can't make a tool that will work for all the infinite combinations of different mappers and types of games. We have to limit it to Mapper 30 in order to make this even feasible.
Here's why we decided on Mapper 30 ultimately. One, Mapper 30 is based on the UNROM or UXROM, which is the most popular mapper of NES games. Every different genre of NES game that you can imagine, there's at least an example of it using that type of mapper. One. Two, it's a newer mapper, and it supports flash saving, which allows us rewriting the carts, and it allows you to use flash memory for save data rather than having to use battery backup. And there was a bunch of other reasons, but those two were sort of primary. And it's not any more expensive than the other mappers or anything like that. It's the same price. So
really available.
Yeah, but it's really important that we use this, and it also prevents people from using this tool to harvest carts. We don't want to destroy any cartridges. We want you to use new ones. So they're relatively inexpensive. You can get them from Infinite NES Lives. Paul's amazing there. In fact, all of our hardware and the cart flasher, the carts come from that source. Any questions about that, let me know. There may be a time where there's a new mapper that we make use of, and you can choose between them. But right now, we're going to say no on that one. Mapper 30, this specific kind of cartridge, and that's what makes it so easy for us to export the data and so seamless for you to make the game.
That's one of the huge variables we just wanted to take out of the equation completely.
Yeah. Will we be able to make side-scrolling platformers? Yes.
If the
module, right. So the module, right now our game doesn't do scrolling. It probably will never do four-way scrolling. Four-way scrolling on the NES is a nightmare. Even prime games like Super Mario Bros. 3 that did four-way scrolling had trouble doing, it had graphic artifacts and things like that. It's not that we can't, it's that the amount of ROM space it takes up to write those routines, it's a lot, and maybe we'll make it available someday. But as far as 2D scrolling, something that emulates sort of a Super Mario Brothers or Super Mario Brothers 2, that sort of, or Mega Man, like that's Castlevania, these sort of scrolling games, we absolutely want to make that available. Currently, our engine is a screen-by-screen engine. We know how to do scrolling. We can. It will take up ROM space. We need to figure out how to factor that into the tool. So that's the kind of thing that we need. That's exactly why we need the crowdfunding to do these modules for those things that our current engine doesn't do. So little R&D on that, a little work in the engine, a little work with the ASM, a little work on the tool to be able to present that as an option for you. But the idea is, yes, 100% it will be able to do side-scrolling platform games. That's why we need that module to be reached.
We know you want that. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of games can you make with with NESmaker?
What can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, with the mod, right now we've already showed on some of our videos on using NESmaker multiple genres of games just with what we already have as a tool. If we are able to add these genre modules, it's going to increase exponentially what you can do with it. So I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but a lot.
Well, it really is. I mean, even with the existing engine that we have, we've been able to repurpose the mechanics narratively. We've been able to create a really wide variety of gameplay possibilities just by being creative about how we apply those variables.
Sure.
So really, the limit is your imagination when it comes to how you utilize this tool.
This makes my penis become the big penis. It's not really a question, so I don't really have an answer for you, but thank you for the input. It also got 7 votes. So, will there be example projects included? I'd love for you to learn while doing instead of ripping it apart, but we will probably have tutorials on how to put something together step by step for sure. So that will be sort of the example project, and there will be some example graphics that you can use.
Yeah, we'd like to give you some stuff to play around with right off the bat, so you don't have to, spend hours in Photoshop before you can start playing with this tool.
I'd say for every module, we'll have probably a graphical set.
Yeah, sure.
And we'll show people how they can make use of different size sprites and, talk about best practices and things like that.
Maybe some assets already created so they can sort of see how that functions.
Sure.
It's a good plan.
Where do we buy replacement carts, and how many greenbacks are we talking about? Friend, also, are the carts rewritable? Hopefully, as far as financial, the Kickstarter has answered that question. How do you buy replacement carts? infinite NES lives. You can buy replacement carts. You can
Cards are absolutely reflashable. We flashed it 20 times today.
Yeah. Can it recreate Toto's Africa? Now, I don't know what you mean by that. The song, the beauty that is, let's just say yes. Sure. Why not?
If you're talking about the video, though, probably not. Maybe if you're going to do like an 8-bit version of it, it's just, again, you got to be creative.
How much is it going to cost? Will this use proprietary game writer, or will it easily incorporate existing EPROM writers? It's using the Kazo flasher, and it is using the Mapper 30 carts. So it works seamlessly with that. That's one of the ways that we've made it easy for people. People who want to get into more tricky, crazy stuff. Awesome. You guys are awesome. We were
if you have that ambition, then you will be able to figure out a way to do it. I'm sure.
But we want to make it so you don't have to think about that stuff. That's sort of the idea. Does this allow playtest on the PC? Absolutely. We have a built-in emulator that's kind of more of a let's take a quick look and check this and make sure that it works. There's some features that aren't supported, like animated tiles on that emulator. We also want to give you an option to open it in your favorite emulator. It has to support Mapper 30. Not all emulators will. Newer ones will. Ones that are still being supported probably will. But if you get an old emulator from 15 years ago that hasn't been updated, it probably won't. So we recommend FCEUX, the latest version of that. And absolutely, you can open the project with that as well and test it there. And that's got some really cool debugging tools that you can check out. You can see what graphics are loaded at any given time. You can use a debugger and things like that. So yes, you can open it on a PC with an emulator, and hopefully we've demonstrated that in the Kickstarter video.
And as a follow-up to that, it works only on PC.
Right.
This time,
and somebody's going to ask that in a second. Yeah, that's the last question. When do you start beta testing, and how do I sign up? Well, one of our goals, as expressed in the rewards section, is that we want to start beta testing about a month after the Kickstarter ends. That'll give us enough time to sort of clean things up and whatever.
Give it usable.
And the idea is that people who sign up for the beta tester reward tier will have access to all the 0.x and 1.x versions until there's a final release. We need to make a big asterisk saying things may change slightly between versions. If you're a beta tester, you have to be aware that until we say, okay, this is the first official release, there may be some changes. And
so don't fall in love with anything that you create with it as a beta tester. You may have to redo some of it. It's all part of the fun.
But also to note, you could finish an entire game with what we have right now before we even get that far.
Obviously, we
have. So it's totally possible that even with an early beta, you could crank out a game and whatever. So that's
if you don't want to start over, just stick with that version of the tool. It's going to have the problems it has, but
exactly.
They're not going to be world-ending.
You're okay. Go ahead.
Fine.
And the last question was, what options are there for Mac users without resorting to Parallels, etc.? Unfortunately, right now, it is PC only. There is no component for Mac or Linux or any other platform. We are working on solutions. Unfortunately, our tool developer develops for Windows. That's the deal. It does work on older Windows systems, so I think even if you had like an XP machine lying around, it should work. We're looking at different options, and hopefully, if the crowdfunding does well enough that it warrants it, we might look for to add on tool developers that work in other platforms to create a version there. So trust me, I'm a Mac user. I have 4 Macs in my house. I have to use Parallels in order to use our tool. I wish I didn't. It is what it is right now, and we'd like to find a solution, and absolutely will if funds allow, and we can actually push the project that far. So thank you guys for your questions. I hope that answers a lot of your frequently asked questions. It's a lot of information. I know this was a long video. I appreciate you guys sticking with us. Please support the project. Tell your friends, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter and Instagram. And
let's make some
AIM doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't?
No. Oh, so you can't share it on AIM. Yahoo Messenger and Skype and what are the other ones the kids are using these days? Friendster.
Snapchat.
MySpace. You guys remember. Anyway, thank you guys. We're going to get back to PAX South. We got a lot to do tonight, and we're going to keep checking in throughout the weekend.